Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the wild theories and strange speculations surrounding the lands between. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight. The Marika Radagon Paradox. Queen Marika and Radagon aren't merely two personalities sharing one body. Based on what we observe about their interactions, they could have originated as separate beings who were forcibly merged by the greater will. The alchemical concept of the rebus describes exactly this phenomenon, where masculine and feminine principles unite to create transcendent perfection. Evidence suggests this merger was incomplete or possibly unwilling, explaining their conflicting goals. Radagon's giant curse. The giant's red braid description mentions a curse placed upon Radagon by the fire giants. Based on this evidence, Radagon's red hair might not be natural but rather a physical manifestation of this curse. This could imply the fire giants marked him as punishment for leading Queen Marika's forces against them during their genocide. The curse may have been designed to eternally remind him of the massacre he participated in. Marika created Radagon. One interpretation suggests Marika created Radagon through some form of divine splitting, perhaps as insurance against her own doubts about the Golden Order. She may have recognized her growing rebellion against the greater will and created a more loyal aspect of herself that would counterbalance her heretical impulses. This explains why Radagon seems almost fanatically devoted to repairing what Marika shattered. The twin deception. Some players theorize Marika and Radagon were born as twins, similar to the D brothers who share one soul between two bodies. This interpretation makes their eventual union less of a merging and more of a reunion. The fact that their children Malenia and Michaela suffer terrible curses might be the natural consequence of what is essentially concentrated divine inbreeding between two halves of the same soul. Radagon was Marika's shadow. Similar to how Malekith serves as Marika's shadow, Radagon may have originally been created as a male counterpart shadow, specifically designed to protect the female Empyrean. Based on what we know about Empyrean shadows being gifted by the two fingers, Radagon's intense loyalty to the Golden Order would make perfect sense. This theory explains why he cannot resist Marika, even when their goals conflict. The Elden Beast created Radagon. Another possibility suggests the Elden Beast itself created Radagon as a failsafe within Marika. When the Greater Will suspected Marika might eventually rebel, it may have implanted this second consciousness inside her, one that would always prioritize the Golden Order. This would explain why Radagon emerges most strongly after the shattering, desperately trying to undo Marika's defiance. Godfrey knew the truth. Cut content dialogue suggests Godfrey was aware of Marika's plan to shatter the Elden Ring. Based on this evidence, Godfrey may have also known about the Marika-Radagon duality before his banishment. His willingness to leave the lands between without resistance could indicate he understood that Marika needed to marry her other self to create the conditions necessary for the shattering. The Greater Will's test. The entire Marika-Radagon situation might be the Greater Will's test to see if a divided God could maintain the Golden Order. By forcing these contradictory impulses into one being, the Greater Will may have been experimenting with creating a God that would police itself. The experiment clearly failed when Marika's rebellious aspect became strong enough to shatter the Elden Ring. Michaela discovered the truth. Michaela's attempts to create unalloyed gold and his eventual abandonment of the Golden Order suggest he learned about his parents' true nature. This discovery may have convinced him that the Golden Order was fundamentally flawed from its inception. If the gods themselves were divided and contradictory, how could their order be perfect? This realization could have driven his quest to become a different kind of god. The Renala abandonment. Radagon's sudden departure from Renala to marry Marika makes more sense if Marika recalled her other self when she needed it most. Perhaps Marika realized she required Radagon's loyalty to maintain control during a crucial period. This would mean Radagon never had true agency in his marriage to Renala, making her heartbreak even more tragic. Saint Trina's true purpose. The connection between Miquella and Saint Trina mirrors the Marika-Radagon relationship, but with crucial differences. Saint Trina may have been Miquella's attempt to separate his own dual nature before it became as conflicted as his parents. By creating a distinct identity for his more gentle, sleep-associated aspects, Miquella might have been trying to avoid the internal war that consumed Marika. Saint Trina was Miquella's love. When Miquella abandoned his love in the Land of Shadow, he was specifically abandoning Saint Trina. Based on the crosses marking his discarded aspects, Saint Trina represented not just a personality, but the capacity for love itself. This suggests Miquella believed love was incompatible with godhood, a tragic conclusion he may have drawn from observing his parents. The sleep-death connection. Saint Trina's association with sleep and Miquella's with eternal youth creates an interesting parallel to death and life. Some theorize that Saint Trina was Miquella's way of exploring death without actually dying. Sleep serves as a little death in many mythologies, and Miquella's research into breaking his curse may have led him to understand death through sleep. Saint Trina survived. Even after Miquella's ascension to godhood, Saint Trina's consciousness persists in the stone coffin fissure. This suggests that splitting off aspects of oneself doesn't actually destroy them, but rather places them in a kind of stasis. Saint Trina's continued existence implies Miquella's transformation wasn't as complete as he believed, and parts of his discarded self might still influence events. The Cradle Song Theory. Cut content reveals Saint Trina sang lullabies to soothe the frenzied flame afflicting the merchants. This indicates Saint Trina was actively working to counter the influence of outer gods through the power of sleep. Based on this evidence, Miquella may have originally intended to use Saint Trina as a weapon against outer god interference before deciding that approach wasn't working. Miquella's gender fluidity. The ambiguity about Saint Trina's gender combined with Miquella's feminine appearance suggests Miquella may not have experienced gender in the same way mortals do. As an Empyrean and potential god, Miquella might have existed beyond such categories. Saint Trina could represent his exploration of different aspects of divine identity rather than strictly feminine or masculine traits. The needle's connection. Miquella's needle can suppress outer god influence, and Saint Trina's sleep magic also counteracts outside forces. This suggests they represent two approaches to the same problem. Miquella used physical, alchemical solutions through unalloyed gold, while Saint Trina employed gentler, more spiritual methods through sleep and dreams. Their separation might represent Miquella rejecting the gentler approach. Godwin's fish transformation. The Prince of Death's bizarre aquatic features draw from the Japanese myth of the Ningyo, fish people who gained immortality by eating mermaid flesh. Godwin's half-death created a perverse form of immortality, transforming him into something that resembles these mythical beings. His fishtail and webbed hands might represent his soul death, trapping him in a state between life and death. Death blight insects. Theory. the thorns of Deathblight are actually composed of insect wings. Based on close examination, these insects spontaneously generate from Godwyn's corrupted flesh, following the ancient and disproven theory of spontaneous generation. This suggests Godwyn's undeath doesn't just spread death, but actively creates new forms of twisted life from his corpse. The worm-face connection. Worm faces may be humans whose bodies have been completely overtaken by the worms that spontaneously generate from Deathblight. When someone is exposed to death corruption for too long, these worms might burrow into their flesh and eventually consume them from within, leaving only the grotesque worm face behind. Godwyn's children theory. The creatures affected by Deathblight, including death-right birds and possibly those who live in death, might be considered Godwyn's spiritual offspring. As the first of the undead and the Prince of Death, Godwyn may be creating a new form of life based on death itself. These beings could represent a new stage in the Lands Between's evolution, one where death and life are no longer separate. The eclipse connection. Castle Soul's research into creating an eclipse to restore Godwyn suggests there's a cosmic solution to his predicament. Based on item descriptions, the eclipse might have been intended to reunite Godwyn's body and soul by creating a moment when the boundaries between life and death thin enough for his soul to return. Miquella's involvement suggests he never gave up on his brother. Fortisax's sacrifice. Ancient dragon. Fortisax's attempt to save Godwyn by entering his deathbed dream and fighting the death from within represents one of the game's most tragic friendships. Fortisax was willing to be consumed by death itself to save his friend. This sacrifice ultimately proved futile, but it demonstrates that even among dragons, Godwyn inspired deep loyalty and love. The Erdtree root infection. Godwyn's burial at the roots of the Erdtree wasn't just unfortunate placement. Some theorize his burial there was intentional, either by his murderers or by those who buried him. Infecting the Erdtree's roots with death could have been part of a larger plan to undermine the Golden Order from within. Ranni's plot may have extended beyond just killing Godwyn to positioning his corpse strategically. Fia's secret plan. Fia's quest to create the mending rune of the Death Prince suggests she saw potential in Godwyn's corrupted state rather than tragedy. By lying with Godwyn and giving him a second life as a god of death, Fia may have been attempting to legitimize those who live in death and create a new order where death is part of the natural cycle again. Rogier's discovery. Sorcerer. Rogier's investigation into the Knight of Black Knives led him to discover aspects of Godwyn's corpse beneath Stormveil. His subsequent infection with Deathblight and slow death might not have been accidental. Perhaps Godwyn's corruption actively attacked those trying to uncover the truth about his murder, protecting the conspirators' secrets even in his undead state. The crab mutations. Crabs growing Godwyn's features on their shells represents one of the game's most grotesque details. These mutations appear specifically on crabs living in water above or near Godwyn's resting place. This suggests Godwyn's corruption can spread through water systems, potentially meaning his influence extends far beyond the visible death root growing on the surface. Miquella's failed cure. The Golden Epitaph. Sword's inscription begging Godwyn to die a true death reveals Miquella's ultimate failure. Despite all his knowledge of unalloyed gold and his research into breaking curses, Miquella couldn't cure Godwyn. This failure may have been the final proof that the Golden Order was irredeemably broken, pushing Miquella toward his radical plan to become a new kind of god. The Knight of Black Knives conspirators. Multiple factions had motives for Godwyn's assassination. Ranni orchestrated it to shed her Empyrean flesh, Marika possibly knew about it, or even encouraged it as part of her rebellion. The Black Knife Assassins were Numen, Marika's own race. This suggests a conspiracy so complex that determining who was truly responsible becomes nearly impossible. Ranni's ritual innovation. The ritual that killed Godwyn and Ranni simultaneously may have been Ranni's invention, something unprecedented in the Lands Between's history. By splitting the curse mark of death between herself and Godwyn, she created 2 half-deaths instead of 2 complete deaths. This could indicate Ranni possessed knowledge about death and souls that surpassed even the Golden Order's understanding. The Fingerslayer blade purpose. The weapon used to kill Godwyn wasn't just any blade, but something specifically crafted to harm gods. The fact that it came from Nokron, an underground city punished by the Greater Will, suggests ancient civilizations had been preparing for divine rebellion long before Marika's time. Ranni accessing this weapon indicates she may have communicated with or learned from these buried civilizations. Godwyn's Golden Order support. Before his death, Godwyn was the Golden Order's finest champion. His friendship with ancient dragon Fortisax and his reputation among both allies and enemies suggests he genuinely believed in the system. His murder therefore represents not just the loss of a person, but the death of the Golden Order's idealism and hope for peaceful cooperation. The Deathbed Dream Realm, the space where Fear and Fortisax fight to protect or corrupt Godwyn, exists outside normal reality. This dream realm might be the only place where Godwyn's soul still has any presence. His soul may not be completely gone, but rather trapped in this nightmare space, eternally dying, but never fully dead. Godwyn's spread is intentional. Rather than being a passive plague, Godwyn's corruption might be actively spreading with some remnant of consciousness guiding it. The strategic placement of his faces and the pattern of deathroot growth could indicate he's trying to communicate or accomplish something even in his undead state. Perhaps his soul isn't as destroyed as everyone believes. The Merchant Genocide. The mass grave of nomadic merchants beneath Leyndell reveals one of the Golden Order's darkest atrocities. These traveling merchants were systematically rounded up and buried alive in the sewers. This persecution appears to have been religiously motivated, suggesting the Golden Order viewed them as heretics or threats to its doctrine. The Frenzied Flame connection. The merchant's suffering called out to the Three Fingers, giving the Frenzied Flame a foothold in the Lands Between. This suggests outer gods actively seek suffering to exploit, using mortal anguish as a gateway into the world. The merchants' prayers in their darkest moment opened a door they couldn't close, dooming them and potentially the entire world. Merchants' combat skills. Every living nomadic merchant can use frenzied flame incantations when attacked. This isn't knowledge they studied, but rather power granted through their collective trauma. The fact that all surviving merchants possess this ability suggests they're connected by their shared history of persecution. They may be psychically linked through their grief. Kale's lost questline. Cut content reveals Merchant Kale originally had a questline where he would discover the fate of his people. This removed storyline would have forced players to confront the genocide directly, rather than piecing it together from environmental clues. The decision to cut this suggests From Software wanted the merchant's tragedy to be something players discovered organically. The caravan's original purpose. Before their persecution, the Great Caravan traveled the Lands Between with an important purpose beyond simple commerce. Some theorize they were spreading teachings or prophecies that threatened the Golden Order's control. Their merchant activities might have been cover for distributing forbidden knowledge, making them targets for elimination. Hieta's true nature. Hieta's quest leading to the three fingers while consuming shabriri grapes, human eyes, connects her to the merchant's suffering. She might be a spiritual manifestation of the merchant's collected anguish, given form to guide worthy individuals to embrace the chaos that could burn away the order that killed her people. The Flame of Frenzy solution. From the merchant's perspective, the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending might not be madness, but justice. The fire that destroys everything represents the only way to ensure no one else suffers as they did. By burning away all distinction and life itself, the Frenzied Flame creates equality through obliteration. This twisted logic makes sense given their trauma. Shabriri's role. The demon Shabriri who possesses Yura may have been the one who originally contacted the imprisoned merchants. As a being associated with madness and chaos, Shabriri could have whispered to them in their darkest moments, offering the power of frenzy as both revenge and release. His continued involvement suggests he's guiding events toward the frenzied flame ending. The three fingers origin. While the two fingers serve the greater will, the three fingers may have been created by mortal suffering rather than cosmic design. The concentrated anguish of the buried merchants could have literally birthed this entity from their collective despair. This would make the three fingers unique among outer gods as one created by mortals, rather than existing prior to their worship. Melina's mission against chaos. Melina promises to hunt down the player if they choose the frenzied flame ending. Her fury at this choice suggests she has personal stakes in preventing chaos from winning. She might have witnessed previous attempts by the frenzied flame to destroy the world, or she could be connected to forces specifically created to counter this threat. The Mausoleum Knights. These silent guardians protect the walking mausoleums containing graceless demigods. Their headless state and connection to deathbird imagery suggest they died in service and were resurrected as undead protectors. The mausoleums they guard might be the only thing preventing the graceless demigods from rising as something worse than those who live in death. Walking mausoleum. Creation. The fusion of stone architecture and organic movement in these structures suggests they were created through a combination of traditional stonework and magic that bound spirits or souls to give them motion. The bells they ring constantly might be feeding them spiritual energy, or could be keeping something sealed within them sleeping. The Shadowbound Beast. Each mausoleum contains a shadowbound beast beneath it, attached to its legs. These creatures might be what actually animates the mausoleums, enslaved to eternally walk as punishment or duty. Attacking these parasitic attachments allows the mausoleums to rest, suggesting the beasts are what keep them in motion against their will. Remembrance, duplication, meaning. The ability to duplicate remembrances inside mausoleums implies these structures exist slightly outside normal time or reality. They preserve not just bodies, but the very essence and memories of the demigods they contain. Creating copies of these essences doesn't diminish the original, suggesting memories and souls work differently than physical matter in the lands between. The graceless demigods. The specific demigods housed in mausoleums are those who died without grace, meaning they fell outside the Golden Order's blessing. This could indicate they were killed by destined death, or died in some other way that prevented the Erd Tree from absorbing them. Their wandering mausoleums might represent their souls searching for the rest denied to them. Mausoleum Bell. Significance. The constant tolling serves multiple purposes beyond simply announcing their presence. The bells might be maintaining a magical barrier that keeps the demigods contained, or they could be calling to something lost. Some theorize the bells are slowly counting down to an event, ringing once for each passing year until some prophesied return. The Erdtree's original nature, the crucible, described as the primordial form of the Erdtree, was apparently more inclusive and wild than the refined Golden Order. Based on item descriptions, the crucible embraced all forms of life, including those later deemed impure like omens, misbegotten, and those with bestial features. The Golden Order's refinement was actually a narrowing of acceptable life forms. Crucible Knight Origins. These ancient warriors served the Erdtree before the Golden Order's establishment. Their bestial aspects and primitive weapons suggest they come from a time when the distinction between human and beast was less pronounced. They might be the last living examples of what humanity looked like during the Crucible Age, making them living fossils rather than corrupted knights. The Omen Truth. Omen children aren't cursed by an outside force, but rather born with features that were once considered blessed during the Crucible Age. Their horns and beast-like characteristics represent a throwback to earlier forms. The Golden Order branded them as cursed to justify their persecution, but they're actually proof that the Crucible's influence never fully disappeared. Morgoth's tragedy. The Veiled Monarch's fanatical loyalty to the system that imprisoned him represents one of the game's cruelest ironies. Morgoth had every reason to hate the Golden Order, yet he became its most dedicated defender. This could indicate he internalized his persecution, believing he deserved his suffering. His defense of the Erdtree becomes a form of Stockholm Syndrome on a divine scale. Mogg's Rebellion. While Morgoth accepted the Golden Order, Mogg rejected it entirely by founding his own dynasty based on blood magic and the Formless Mother. His choice to embrace his omen nature and seek power through an outer god represents the opposite response to persecution. Where Morgoth sought acceptance, Mogg demanded domination. The Formless Mother's plan. This outer god specifically chose Mogg because his omen blood made him susceptible to her influence. The Formless Mother may specifically target those society rejects, offering them power in exchange for worship. Her formless nature could mean she adapts to whatever form her followers need, making her particularly dangerous to desperate outcasts. Mogg's Miquella obsession. Mogg's kidnapping of Miquella might have been influenced by Miquella's charm ability, even while Miquella slept. The Shadow of the Erdtree DLC suggests Miquella had been manipulating Mogg all along, using him as a tool to reach the Land of Shadow. This recontextualizes Mogg as a victim rather than perpetrator, charmed into betraying his own dynasty. The Blood Dynasty's future. Without Mogg to lead it, the Blood Dynasty faces an uncertain future. His followers like Vara continue recruiting Tarnished to the cause, suggesting the Formless Mother's influence persists even after Mogg's death. The dynasty might transform into something new, possibly with another leader rising to claim Mogg's throne and continue his work. Radan's Vow. The promise Radan made to Miquella remains one of the DLC's most controversial revelations. Based on what we learn, this vow was made long before Millennia's attack. Radan agreeing to become Miquella's consort changes our understanding of their battle. Millennia might have been trying to force Radan to fulfill his promise rather than fighting him for tactical reasons. The Gravity Magic Sacrifice. Radan's legendary gravity magic, learned so he could continue riding Leonard, might have been only partially about his horse. The gravity sorceries could have been preparation for his role as Miquella's consort, requiring a him to master reality-bending magic. His ability to hold back the stars, might have been training for the cosmic responsibilities of being a god's lord. Leonard's true nature. Radan's beloved horse surviving the entire battle and remaining loyal through his master's rot-induced madness suggests Leonard might not be an ordinary horse. Some theorize Leonard is enchanted or blessed, possibly by Miquella himself. The horse's ability to carry a gravity magic-empowered demigod could indicate divine intervention in its creation. Millennia's desperation. When Millennia bloomed in Kaelid, she was losing her battle with Radan. This moment of desperation forced her to embrace the Scarlet Rot's power more fully than ever before. Her third bloom would complete her transformation into a goddess of rot, but she's resisted this fate so far. The question remains whether she's fighting inevitability or successfully maintaining her identity. The Scarlet Aeonia spread. Each bloom creates a permanent rot zone that continues expanding slowly. Kaelid's devastation isn't finished but actively growing, meaning the region will become increasingly uninhabitable. If Millennia achieves her third bloom, the entire lands between could eventually succumb to scarlet rot. She's essentially a ticking time bomb that could destroy the world. Millicent's true purpose. As Millennia's offspring or spiritual bud, Millicent represents what Millennia could become if she embraced her rot nature. The choice players make regarding Millicent's fate might represent different paths Millennia herself could take. Helping Millicent reject the rot could inspire Millennia to do the same, while letting her succumb could normalize Millennia's eventual transformation. The Clean Rot Knight's choice. These devoted warriors accepted rot infection to serve Millennia, knowing it would slowly transform them into something between living and dead. Their loyalty transcends normal military service, suggesting religious devotion. They might view Millennia as a messiah figure rather than just a commander, believing her curse is actually a divine gift. The Haligtree's purpose. Miquella's attempt to grow an alternative to the Erd Tree represents one of the game's most ambitious plans. The Haligtree was supposed to be inclusive, accepting those the Golden Order rejected. Its watering with Miquella's blood and his embedding within it suggests he was literally trying to become a new god tree to replace the Erd Tree. The Albinoric Sanctuary. The first-generation Albinorics found refuge at the Haligtree after being persecuted elsewhere. Their degenerative condition that paralyzes their legs might be connected to their artificial creation. Miquella's acceptance of them suggests he saw their artificial nature as no different from natural life, opposing the Golden Order's discrimination based on origin. Loretta's journey. The Knight Loretta traveled from the Carian Manor to the Haligtree, seeking a place for her Albinoric followers. Her presence as a boss in both locations suggests she maintained ties to her former home, even while serving Miquella. Her ultimate fate defending the Haligtree represents the tragedy of someone who found hope only to see it destroyed. Millennia's waiting. Millennia remains at the Haligtree's peak, waiting for Miquella's return, unaware he's abandoned his physical form and can never come back. Her eternal vigil represents one of the game's saddest moments. She continues defending a place that no longer serves its purpose, protecting something already dead without realizing it. The unalloyed gold theory. Miquella's creation of unalloyed gold represents an attempt to create matter that outer gods cannot influence. This substance could resist the interference of entities like the Scarlet Rot God or the Frenzied Flame. His needles made from this material can suppress outer god influence, suggesting he found at least a partial solution to the god's manipulation of reality. Rani's Age of Stars. Rani's plan to remove the Elden Ring from the world entirely and take it to space represents the most radical ending. She believes mortals should be free from divine manipulation completely. However, this would mean removing both the blessings and protections the Erdtree provided. Her ending trades certainty and order for freedom and uncertainty. The Dark Moon Mystery. Rani's connection to the Dark Moon differs from her mother Renala's connection to the full moon. The Dark Moon might represent a different force entirely, possibly even an outer god that Rani is allying with. Her age might not be freedom from gods, but rather replacing the greater will's influence with the Dark Moon's. Bled's fate. As Rani's shadow given to her by the Two Fingers, Bled was programmed to eventually oppose her if she betrayed the Golden Order. His increasing madness represents this programming asserting itself. The tragedy is that Bled genuinely loved Rani and wanted to support her, but his created nature forced him to become her enemy. Iji's sacrifice. The giant blacksmith Iji knew helping Rani would lead to his death. The Black Knife assassin's attack on him wasn't random, but targeted punishment for his role in Rani's plans. His decision to help her anyway, fully aware of the consequences, represents pure selfless loyalty. He valued Rani's freedom more than his own life. Seluvis's puppet scheme. The Sorcerer. Seluvis's plan to turn Rani into a puppet reveals he never truly served her goals. His puppet-making obsession represents a desire to control and possess rather than serve. The fact that Rani knows about his true nature but tolerates him until he goes too far suggests she was using him for his knowledge while planning to dispose of him eventually. The Carian royal family. Renala's family practiced moon sorcery that seems fundamentally different from other magic in the lands between. Their power wasn't granted by the Erdtree or Golden Order, but derived from celestial bodies. This suggests alternative sources of power existed before the Golden Order's dominance. The Carian royalty might represent the last remnants of a pre-Erdtree magical tradition. Renala's heartbreak magic. After Radagon's abandonment, Renala's grief transformed her magic into something twisted. The reborn students she creates are failed attempts to bring back what she lost or to perfect rebirth. Her boss fight illusion created by Rani protects a broken woman who lost everything. The amber egg Radagon left might be actively harmful rather than a parting gift. The Celian sorcerers. The town of Celia housed sorcerers who practiced star magic distinct from both Raya Lucaria and Carian traditions. Their concealment barriers and night sorceries suggest that they were hiding from something. The town's current state, overrun by rot and mostly abandoned, implies their magic couldn't protect them from Millennia's bloom in nearby Kailid. Lusat and Azor's discovery. The primeval sorcerers. Lusat and Azor discovered something that transformed them into barely living husks. Their graven mass appearance suggests they gazed too deeply into the cosmos and lost their humanity. The sorceries they created are incredibly powerful, but require sacrificing one's connection to physical reality. They might have seen the true nature of the universe and couldn't handle the revelation. The graven schools. The horrifying graven masses composed of multiple sorcerers' heads fused together represent failed attempts to combine magical knowledge. These experiments suggest Raya Lucaria believed that merging multiple sorcerers could create a being with greater understanding. The results are grotesque failures, but the fact that they still live implies the theory wasn't completely wrong. Selen's transformation. Selen's fate of becoming a graven school herself represents the culmination of her research into primeval sorcery. She either voluntarily transformed to achieve greater power, or was forced into this state as punishment. Her conscious awareness remaining inside the graven mass makes her fate particularly cruel. She gained knowledge, but lost everything that made her human. The crystalline connection. These crystal creatures might be sorcerers who completely transform themselves into living magic. Their brittleness when broken, but extreme durability, otherwise suggests they exist in a state between matter and energy. They could represent an alternative path for sorcerers, becoming permanent elemental beings rather than remaining flesh. Thops's barrier theory. The humble sorcerer. Thops developed a spell that can deflect Carian sorceries specifically. His insight suggests he understood something about the nature of Carian magic that eluded more prestigious scholars. His death after returning to the academy and his request to learn suggests the institution was hostile to unconventional thinking like his. Patches' ultimate survival. The recurring character. Patches appears across multiple From Software games, always surviving through cowardice and betrayal. His appearance in Elden Ring might not be the same Patches, but rather a universal archetype that manifests in different worlds. He represents the idea that sometimes survival matters more than honor or courage. Tanith's devotion. Tanith's loyalty to Rykard persists even after his defeat. Her consumption of his remains and descent into insanity suggests she sees becoming one with him as romantic, rather than horrifying. Her perspective shows how love can become twisted when directed toward those embracing power at any cost. She can't conceive of a future without Rykard in it. The Volcano Manor family. The group of outcasts and recusants Rykard assembled represents society's rejects finding community. Their assassination contracts target tarnished loyal to the Golden Order, suggesting Rykard's rebellion has specific ideological enemies. The manor serves as both home and base of operations for those who chose to oppose the system that failed them. Rykard's serpent fusion. The Lord of Blasphemy's decision to feed himself to a god-devouring serpent represents his ultimate rejection of humanity and divine order. By becoming the serpent, he gained power to literally consume gods. His grotesque form shows the cost of this power, but from his perspective, losing humanity was worth the strength gained. The serpent's true nature. The god-devouring serpent might be an ancient creature older than the Erd Tree. Its ability to consume gods suggests it was designed or evolved specifically as a predator of divine beings. Rykard discovering and feeding himself to this creature implies he found it rather than created it, meaning something in the lands between's past made this anti-god weapon. Blasphemous Claw. Origins. The claw that can deflect destined death comes from the god-devouring serpent. This implies the serpent fought Malekith at some point and developed a defense against the one thing that could kill it permanently. The existence of this weapon proves the serpent survived an encounter with destined death, making it one of the few entities to do so. The recusant ideology. Those who join Volcano Manor embrace recusancy, the rejection of divine grace and divine authority. This isn't mere rebellion, but a philosophical position that mortals should forge their own path without gods dictating their destiny. The recusants represent the most radical opposition to the Golden Order's ideology. Dialos's transformation. The noble Dialos's journey from vain aristocrat to defender of Jarfolk shows how Volcano Manor changes its members. His willingness to die protecting the weak, despite his former cowardice, suggests exposure to the Manor's ideology awakened his better nature. His death, protecting those the world considers Disposable validates his transformation from useless noble to genuine hero. The Jar Folk. Mystery. These living pots filled with warrior remains might represent an attempt to preserve and combine great warrior strength. Alexander the Warrior Jar seeks to fill himself with the greatest champion's remains, suggesting Jar Folk believe they can become greater by absorbing others. This raises disturbing questions about whether the warriors inside consented. The Ancestral Followers. The societies living in the underground Siofra and Ainsel rivers worship ancient spirits and practice ancestor reverence. Their architecture and culture appear older than the surface civilizations, suggesting they descended from societies that predated the Erd Tree. They might represent what lands between cultures looked like before the Greater Will's arrival. The Eternal Cities. Nokron and Nokstella were buried underground as punishment for creating something that offended the Greater Will. The Fingerslayer Blade and their experiments with silver tears suggest they were researching how to kill or resist gods. Their punishment of being sealed underground implies the Greater Will fears what they learned. The Silvertear Creation. These liquid beings can perfectly mimic other creatures, suggesting the Eternal Cities achieved remarkable mastery over life's fundamental nature. They might have been attempting to create life without divine intervention, which could explain why the Greater Will destroyed their civilizations. The Mimic Tears represent artificial life that works too well. The Dragonkin Soldiers. These failed attempts to create dragons through artificial means populate the underground cities. Their imperfect forms and tragic nature suggest the Eternal Cities were trying to replicate dragonkind without understanding the fundamental nature of what makes a dragon. They created mockeries that are neither fully human nor dragon, trapped in agonizing existence. Astal's destruction. The natural-born Astal and similar falling star beasts might be the actual weapons the Greater Will used to destroy the Eternal Cities. These cosmic entities literally fell from the stars, and their void-based powers could reshape entire landscapes. The existence of multiple Astals suggests these were mass-produced weapons rather than unique beings. The star's true nature. The stars in the Elden Ring might not be astronomical bodies, but rather manifestations of fate and outer gods. Radan, holding them in place, prevented not just Ranni's destiny, but possibly others' fates from manifesting. Releasing the stars allows these divine influences to resume their interference with the lands between. Renala's egg contents. The amber egg Radagon gave Renala might contain something more than just power for rebirth. Some theorize it holds a part of Radagon, or even a future god. Renala's obsessive cradling of it and her ability to perform perfect rebirth through it suggests the egg is connected to the Elden Ring itself. The Tarnished's true purpose. Marika's plan to strip Godfrey and his warriors of grace and banish them was specifically so they could later return to challenge the current order. She created an entire army of warriors unbound by grace who could make choices the grace-guided couldn't. The Tarnished were designed to be her weapons against the system she helped create. The Greater Will's absence. Throughout the game, the Greater Will never directly communicates or intervenes, despite its representatives constantly claiming to speak for it. This suggests the Greater Will might be absent, dead, or never existed, as the Two Fingers claimed. The entire Golden Order could be built on interpreting silence as divine will. The Elden Beast nature. As the living embodiment of the Elden Ring, the Elden Beast serves as the Greater Will's avatar. Its cosmic, alien appearance suggests it's fundamentally incomprehensible to mortal minds. The beast using Radagon's body as a weapon implies it views gods and mortals as mere tools for its incomprehensible purposes. The Outer Gods War. Multiple outer gods compete for influence over the lands between. The Greater Will, the Scarlet Rot God, the Formless Mother, the Frenzied Flame, and possibly the Dark Moon. These entities might be engaged in a cosmic conflict that plays out through mortal champions. Every ending represents victory for a different outer god or freedom from them all. Goldmask's revelation. The noble scholar Goldmask discovers the flaw in the Golden Order, that gods are fallible. His ending attempts to perfect the order by removing the god's ability to make mistakes. However, this might be impossible since fallibility seems inherent to consciousness itself. A perfect order might require removing free will entirely. Corin's faith crisis. Brother Corin's journey with Goldmask leads him to question his faith when confronted with the Golden Order's fundamental flaws. His inability to accept these revelations and eventual disappearance suggests some truths destroy the people who discover them. Faith might require not looking too closely at what you believe. The Dung Eater's philosophy. The Dung Eater seeks to curse everyone's descendants forever, believing universal suffering creates equality. His logic suggests he experienced something so terrible that he wants to ensure everyone shares his pain. His ending represents nihilism, taken to its ultimate conclusion, where if everyone is cursed, then curses become the new normal. Boggart's tragedy. The simple merchant Boggart becomes a victim of the Dung Eater, despite having done nothing to deserve such a fate. His casual acceptance of the tarnished and willingness to share his meager food makes his death particularly cruel. He represents innocent victims of ideological extremism, having no defense against true believers in terrible causes. Fire's champions. The deathbed companion's ability to hold and transfer the vigor of champions to the dead represents an alternative approach to death. Her ending seeks to legitimize those who live in death, arguing they deserve acceptance rather than persecution. She offers a middle path between the Golden Order's rejection of death and the Frenzied Flame's obliteration. Dee's dual nature. The twin brother who share one soul but have separate bodies represent a mystery never fully explained. Their inability to exist simultaneously and need to share equipment implies a connection even deeper than normal twins. They might represent an attempt to create multiple bodies for one consciousness, similar to but distinct from Marika and Radagon. The Erd Tree's thorns. The massive thorns blocking entry to the Erd Tree seem to be grown by Radagon to prevent anyone from entering. These thorns require burning the tree itself to remove, suggesting Radagon would rather destroy what he's trying to protect than let it be changed. This represents the ultimate expression of conservative philosophy: destruction rather than evolution. The Three Fingers design. The inverse of the two fingers in both number and purpose suggests these entities were split from a single source. Perhaps there were originally 5 fingers that split into 2 and 3, representing order and chaos. This division might reflect a fundamental schism in the Greater Will's nature, or the universe itself, splitting into dual concepts. Vike's near victory. The Tarnished who came closest to becoming Elden Lord, but chose the Frenzied Flame to save his maiden, represents the road not taken. Vike's armor and weapons scattered across the lands between serve as warnings. His choice to sacrifice his goal for love makes him more human than most characters, but this humanity led to his capture and imprisonment. Bernal's recusancy. The knight who hunts wielders of destined death after his own maiden sacrifice suggests a personal vendetta. Bernal's quest might represent a warrior who lost faith in the entire system after watching his maiden burn. His eventual invasion of the player if they access Farum Azula implies he opposes anyone getting close to the Elden Ring's power. Nefeli's true heritage, her connection to Huaralu, Godfrey's true name, suggests she might be a distant descendant of the first Elden Lord. Gideon adopting her specifically because of this lineage shows he collects people like he collects knowledge. Her storyline represents a royal who doesn't know her heritage, rejecting the system that would claim her. The Hate family. Kenneth Hate's delusions of grandeur and search for a proper lord to serve represents the old nobility clinging to traditions. His quest to reclaim his fort and restore the old order shows how some people can't adapt to changed circumstances. He's a relic of a world that no longer exists, unable to accept reality. The Round Table holds nature. This sanctuary exists outside normal space, appearing to multiple tarnished simultaneously. It might be a collective dream or a pocket dimension created by the two fingers. The fact that it can burn despite not being physically real suggests that conceptual spaces have their own reality in the lands between. Hugh's imprisonment. The blacksmith Hugh was imprisoned in the hold and tasked with forging a god-slaying weapon. His dedication, despite his enslavement and memory loss, represents duty persisting beyond understanding why. His recognition that completing his task means his purpose ends suggests he fears fulfillment more than eternal imprisonment. Roderica's spirit sight. The chrysalids she sees in the Round Table hold represent spirits trapped in transition. Her ability to strengthen spirit ashes implies she can interact with the dead in ways others cannot. She might be seeing the hole's true nature, a place where the living and dead overlap, where spirits wait for purpose or release. The finger reader crones. These ancient women who read the two fingers' movements and translate divine will might be living longer than natural through their service. Their existence, bound to interpreting silence, raises questions about whether they truly understand what they're translating or simply provide what people want to hear. Miriel's tolerance. The Turtle Pope Pastor Miriel preaches harmony between different magical traditions. His belief that all knowledge should be welcome regardless of source opposes the Golden Order's doctrine that some truths are heretical. His peaceful nature, despite learning all forms of magic, suggests knowledge itself isn't corrupting, but how it's used matters. The Dragon Communion. Consuming dragon hearts to gain their power represents a form of cannibalism that transforms the user. The churches offering this practice might be ancient, predating the Golden Order. The fact that Dragon Communion doesn't corrupt the user like other forms of forbidden magic suggests dragons consent to being eaten or gain something from this practice. Placidusax's lost heads. The Dragon Lord having multiple heads that were somehow removed or lost suggests dragons can survive traumatic injuries that would kill anything else. His two remaining heads and phantom third one imply a battle so catastrophic it wounded a god. The enemy capable of doing this was never identified, leaving open questions about who or what could harm an Elden Lord. The ancient dragon memory. Placidusax's arena existing outside time allows him to fight eternally in his prime, despite being wounded in the present. This suggests dragons don't experience time linearly, or can access past versions of themselves. His waiting for his god to return implies the entity he served might also exist outside normal time. Lanciax and Vike. the ancient dragon Lanciax teaching her powers to the knight. Vike suggests dragons can form genuine bonds with humans. Their relationship leading to Vike's eventual madness might have been influenced by Lanciax's grief over watching her student fall. Dragons experiencing emotions at human intensity could explain why some ally with mortals. Fortisax's lightning. The transformation of lightning from gold to red represents ancient dragon Fortisax, being corrupted by death while trying to save Godwyn. His continued fight in the deathbed dream shows his loyalty persisting beyond death. The fact that he can still be summoned suggests his spirit refuses to accept failure, even after his physical death. The Beastman's purpose. Farum Azula's Beastman inhabitants served the dragons as warriors and attendants. Their continued presence after the city's fall and the dragon's decline suggests absolute loyalty or inability to exist elsewhere. They might be bound to Farum Azula itself, unable to leave even if they wanted to. The Godskins hunt. The Godskin apostles and nobles hunted and flayed gods before the Golden Order's establishment. Their use of Godskin in their clothing proves they successfully killed divine beings. The existence of these god hunters implies that before Marika removed destined death, gods died regularly. The current age might be unusual in its immortal divinity. The Gloam-eyed Queen. This mysterious figure led the Godskins and wielded destined death before Malekith defeated her and sealed it away. Her identity remains unknown, but she might have been an Empyrean like Marika. The fact that someone successfully wielded the power to kill gods suggests they might have been chosen by an outer god opposing the greater will. Malekith's guilt. The beast clergyman's split personality with Malekith shows the trauma of betrayal. When players return Deathroot to him, they're feeding the part of him that hungers for what was stolen. His eventual realization of betrayal and transformation represents the shattering of identity when duty and loyalty conflict. Gurrang's true feelings. Even knowing the player attacked him as Malekith, Gurrang forgives them and continues his relationship. This suggests a deep loneliness or acceptance that betrayal is inevitable when guarding something others covet. His friendship might be desperately held despite pain, because complete isolation is worse. The bestial incantations. Magic derived from the Crucible and bestial nature represents the oldest forms of power. These incantations suggest that before complex sorcery and faith magic, raw life force manipulation existed. The beast clergyman teaching these might be preserving knowledge from before civilization existed in the lands between. The walking envoys. These strange corpulent creatures blowing bubbles herald the arrival of new Elden Lords or major changes. Their grotesque appearance and childlike demeanor create disturbing contrast. They might be manifestations of change itself, appearing when the world shifts toward new paradigms. Their bubble attacks causing madness suggest change itself, drives people insane. Miranda Flower's consciousness. The giant flowers that attack players might be more intelligent than they appear. Their coordinated behaviors and locations suggest strategic placement. They could be servants of an outer god related to growth and consumption, similar to how rot flowers serve the scarlet rock god. The Revenant's origin. These multi-armed undead might be created through specific circumstances of death rather than naturally arising. Their extreme aggression and teleportation abilities suggest deep anger at their undead state. They might be those who live in death, who went completely insane from their condition. The Basilisk mystery. These creatures appearing throughout caves might be younger versions of Godwyn's fish form. Their death blight clouds don't fit normal animal abilities, suggesting they're connected to his corruption. They could be Godwyn's influence manifesting in natural creatures, transforming them into extensions of himself. The rune bear's strength. These incredibly powerful normal animals suggest the lands between's basic wildlife is far more dangerous than typical fantasy settings. Rune bears being stronger than many demigods implies that Marika's rune fragments enhance natural creatures beyond reason. Regular animals accessing divine power creates monsters. The singing bats. These creatures in Noxtella emit sounds that cause madness. Their presence in the Eternal City suggests they were either weapons created by that civilization or naturally evolved in response to the underground environment. Their songs might be attempting communication that mortal minds interpret as madness-inducing noise. The ant army, giant ants working in coordinated groups in underground areas, suggests hive intelligence. Their collection of items and establishment of colonies implies they're building something. They might be preparing for surface invasion, or they could be sealing underground areas to prevent something from escaping. The perfumer's role. These healers using aromatic arts served various factions throughout the Shattering. Their neutral stance and willingness to treat all sides suggests a medical ethos that transcends politics. The perfumer questline exploring their loyalties shows how healers become entangled in conflicts despite trying to remain separate. The astrologer's knowledge. Star readers who divine fate by observing celestial movements might have seen the greater will's plans before they manifested. Their predictions could have led some to oppose the Golden Order, knowing its eventual fate. Astrologers might be prophets interpreting outer gods' intentions through cosmic movements. The nomadic warriors. The wandering warriors found throughout the world represent a culture of martial tradition outside the Golden Order's structure. Their independence and refusal to settle suggest they maintained freedom by never accepting any lord's authority. They might be descended from warriors who rejected Marika's rule during her conquest. The land, octopi. These anomalous creatures existing in surface water pools represent how the lands between's ecology doesn't follow normal rules. Their presence might indicate underground water systems connecting different regions. They could be Godwyn's corruption spreading through waterways, transforming normal octopi into land dwellers. The flame monks, dedicated to preserving the flame of ruin. Despite their god's death, these monks show faith persisting beyond its object's destruction. They guard a power that destroyed their people, suggesting they believe the flame serves a purpose beyond its wielder. Their duty outlasting their deity implies obligation transcending reason. The mountaintop of giants. This frozen region represents the fire giants' former homeland before Marika's genocide. The perpetual snow and ice might be unnatural, imposed as punishment after the war. The area's harsh conditions ensure no one forgets what happened there, a memorial through environmental hostility. The Forge of Giants, the massive bowl where Marika imprisoned the fell god's flame, represents both victory and fear. She couldn't destroy the flame completely, so she contained it. The forge, requiring a maiden's sacrifice to access, shows Marika built terrible costs into preventing others from using this power. The Fell God Theory. The one-eyed god of the fire giants might still be alive inside the forge's flame. Its imprisonment, rather than death, suggests it was too powerful to kill permanently. When players burn the Erd Tree using this flame, they might be temporarily freeing this god, making it an unwitting ally against Marika's order. The Fire Giant's duty. The last Fire Giant's loyalty to guarding the forge despite his people's extinction shows duty overriding personal desire. He could leave, but he maintains his post as the last survivor of his race. His death represents the final ending of giant civilization, making players complicit in genocide's completion. The Troll Smith. Smithing Master Hugh reveals that trolls served the Golden Order despite their relation to giants. This suggests Marika used the survivors of her genocide as slaves, a cruelty beyond simply destroying them. Trolls working to maintain the order that destroyed their cousins represents the ultimate expression of subjugation. Thank you for journeying with me tonight, Cozy Knights. If this story helped you rest, consider leaving a like. It helps other weary travelers find their way to our fireside. And remember, there are many more tales waiting for you here by the fire. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. Until next time, sleep peacefully and have a cozy night.